Congratulations on making it to state finals. We are going to talk today about Unit 4B. Hopefully that's what you're prepared for. We're going to introduce ourselves. Y'all can introduce yourselves and introduce us to your sponsor. And then we'll get started, and you all can give us a 4-minute discussion about the parties, and then we'll have a 6-minute conversation. I'm Brad Martin. I'm a civil engineer, and I have a business in Virginia Beach.
I'm Connie Jorgensen. I'm Assistant Professor of Political Science at Piedmont Virginia Community College in Charlottesville.
I'm Bill Reuter. For years I was an 8th grade teacher of civics, and now I have the wonderful job of being the parent of 9 and a 6-year-old. I'm a stay-at-home dad.
I'm Antonio Vacanti in Westwood Christian Academy.
My name is Madison Fuentes, and I am in the 8th grade.
I'm Josh Buckley, I'm in the 8th grade.
I'm Morgan Campbell, I'm in the 8th grade, and Mrs. Hahn is our teacher.
Our timer is ready?
Yes, please.
The question is, political parties are an important part of our political system today, yet they are not mentioned in the Constitution. Why did the framers fear political parties? Why and how did political parties develop? And do political parties play a useful role today? Why or why not? Please begin.
Soon after the framers of the Constitution established a basic government to rule over the young country of America, the weed of division soon started to sprout. The Republican government they conceived was to create unity amongst the people, but sadly, their worst fears came true: disjuncture and dissent. While they expected clashing views, they didn't expect entire parties to merge out of discord. If two political parties constantly argue and attack each other's ideals, the country would downgrade into chaos and confusion. People would start doubting their own beliefs for what a government should be. They would either give up trying for a good government whose structures are weak and easily changed because of the lack of faith, their voices would be heard. George Washington himself admitted his fears of political parties in his farewell address. He believed they were detrimental to the health of the government and of the people because it led a small but artful and enterprising minority to put in the place of the delegated will of the nation, the will of a party.
Briefly after hearing disapproval from one of the most influential men of this period, two men's disagreements had already put a wedge in complete unity. Alexander Hamilton, another founding father, brought widespread disagreement with his ideas, in particular with him being in favor of repaying state debts and federal involvement in banking. His opponent, Thomas Jefferson, opposed the assumption of state debts since most Southerners had already paid most of their debts. He also disagreed on the national bank because it would help the northern industries while doing nothing for the southern agriculture. Sadly, Hamilton's and Jefferson's oppositions for another soon turned into all-out hatred. Without healthy contradictions and compromises, their non-pliable and obstinate views not only separated them individually, but separated the country. Hamilton's new party, the Federalists, believed in strong federal government with a national bank and favored ratification. Jefferson's party, the Democratic Republicans, did not want the government being associated with their affairs, but rather wanted state or local governments to be involved. The people soon began to hate and attack the people of the parties instead of the issues at hand. An example would be the Alien and Sedition Acts. While the acts tried to have the facade of protecting the country from potential terrorists, the Federalists mainly formed it to hurt the Democratic Republican Party.
The question of whether or not political parties play useful roles can be approached two different ways. The first being, should embrace the varying opinions because it passionately lobbies for different views and keeps the country from becoming a dictatorship. But what is a blessing to some may serve as a curse to others. This also may very well be the formation of a fourth branch of government, also known as the special interest group, with many self-serving lobbyists. The second approach would be wariness and concern for the division of the country with differing views. People no longer look at the issues themselves, but rather the agenda behind the parties and special interest groups that are driving them. The savage attacks and mudslinging to individuals and not the topic at hand is appalling, despite whether or not their views are incorrect. A political debate should never be turned into an argument, more likely to be known as informal fallacy.
The Founding Fathers, while having opposing stances on issues, all had common standard. They did away with moral relativity, and all issues were debated on a mutually agreed upon common foundation. In order to be contradicting, it is always best to first be like-minded with the opponents.
Okay, thank you. If you could put away your notes, we'll talk about that for about 6 minutes. Okay, you want to start?
If I understood your opening statement right, and if I didn't, please correct me, I sensed a real a discomfort with political parties in your statement. If you were going to do away with political parties, how would you organize government? Political parties have a powerful role to play in organizing government.
Well, it is always good to have different views, and if not, it would turn into some sort of democracy or communist society where everyone must agree or there will be consequences. And it is our freedom of speech to have our voices heard, so it is good to have different views. But at the same time, you should not be creating totally different parties and then instead of debating the views and trying to work them out, you would have to basically we are starting to just flat out insult and do argument ad hominem and insult the people instead of the main issue.
You mentioned the mudslinging that goes on in campaigns today between the parties, and of course the mudslinging can go on only because the press reports it. What do you think the press has done? Has the press done a responsible job in our elections in presenting the views of the political parties and educating people?
They haven't. Well, they have played a very big role. And during election time, there's almost every other commercial or ad is on insulting an opponent and advertising another candidate. And it is giving Americans a wrong view of their candidate. If they have, if they do have good views, and if it may very well change a person's mind, which is their objective, but it might not be really that.
We obviously have a two-party system now. What would the differences be if there were just one political party, or if, like Canada or somewhere else or England, there were a lot of political parties, more than two?
Well, if there are more than two parties, people might feel like that there's too many, and they would be separated amongst all the parties. If there is one, people's views would not be heard because people obviously feel different about the state of government and other things like that.
Okay. To follow up on that, if there were many political parties, do you think that would be a better situation for an individual voter to maybe find the exact political party that matches all of his views?
I think so. I think they need different options for the political parties.
Well, I somewhat disagree with that because there are many, many parties. Nothing will be resolved because back then with Jackson's party, President Jackson, and all the other parties, they had they started sending more representatives, and it got more messier and complicated. And not everyone's voices will be heard. They should be heard, but there will have to be compromises for everyone, and there should be a distinguished party so that will have general common standard so that can debate and can send their representatives.
So are you arguing that political parties then hinder compromise?
No, they're not. They don't hinder compromise, but too many
Okay.
make me
that the two political parties right now are in gridlock, that the Republicans and the Democrats seem to be more interested in getting elected than in getting things done for the people. Would you or disagree or agree with that, and why?
I agree with that, many, they're trying to get into office, and if you promise the people one thing, more people will vote. So many of them end up as empty promises then.
You all mentioned special interest groups in your opening statement. How would special interest groups, or in this case very specifically the money in politics, be different if there were or were not political parties? Do the political parties make the special interest groups happen, or would special interest groups exist anyway?
Special interest groups probably would still be there because there will always be groups of people who want a common objective, and so whether or not it is party or not, so I agree with that because many, whether or not there were going to be Republicans or Democrats, there will always be people who are from different parties who still may want to do the same thing.
Can you just very, in 10 words or less, maybe, well, never mind.
Good job, congratulations. We'll give you a couple of points of critique or commendation. Connie, do you want to start?
I really liked your opening statement. I liked all the history that you gave. I would like, though, to have seen a little more current events brought into your opening statement and into your the way you answered some of your questions, using maybe specific examples of what's happening today with political parties that might have strengthened some of your answers. But really, really nice work. Thank you.
Same thing, great opening statement, you hit all the things, and you also added some things that I think are not in the book. And of course, I don't know if your teacher told you or not, that's one of the things that is a great tool to get judges to ask about. Put something that's not in the book in, and we'll go right for it. So you better make sure that you know a lot about that. It's a great trick for with the people. I know that from both sides because I've coached a team and I've also been judging for years. Make sure you really do know, as Connie said, a whole lot about it and be able to cite specific examples, which is great. If you're talking about political parties today, for example, talk about legislation that they're dealing with from the current Congress, and so look at those sorts of things. And I hope that you do go on to high school and continue this program. Do you know if the high school you're going to has a We the People program? Get involved, stay involved. You are the core group who knows how to do this. You did a great job. Keep up the good work.
I was really impressed. I do wish you could have finished your opening statement, maybe work on the timing of that, but that was good. I think, Mr. McConty, you used a phrase that I hadn't heard really before, "We the division." That was, it's cool to use a phrase like that will stick in our minds. And good, well done disagreeing with each other. Don't be embarrassed to do that. I'm sure your coach has told you that. That is a real sign of maturity and understanding the concepts that you're doing. So good job, very impressive.
Thank you.